In the winter of 1959, 9 young hikers vanished in the northern Ural Mountains. When rescuers found their campsite, it looked like a scene frozen in panic. Their tent was torn open from the inside. Their boots and coats were still there. Bare footprints led away into the darkness, some in socks, some barefoot, heading toward the edge of a frozen forest. Weeks later, their bodies were discovered scattered across the snow. Some lay beneath a cedar tree beside the remains of a small fire. Others were half buried in a ravine. Most had died from the cold, but several showed injuries that looked more like the aftermath of a car crash than a mountain accident. One woman's tongue and eyes were missing. For more than 60 years, the Dyatlov Pass disaster has haunted mountaineers, scientists, and truth seekers. Theories range from avalanches and hurricane winds to military experiments and UFOs. None explains everything, but taken together, they tell a story of human courage, fear, and one terrible night when everything went wrong. This is the story of the 9 who never made it home. The northern Urals don't look extreme at first glance. The peaks rise barely over 3,600 feet, but in winter, they might as well be the Himalayas. Blizzards sweep the ridgelines. The temperature can plunge far below zero. In the white silence, even the wind sounds alive. The hikers camped near a place called Kholat Syakhl, a name from the Mansi people that translates to Dead Mountain. It's treeless, open, and brutally exposed. In February, snow lies waist deep, and the wind carves ridges into slabs that can shift without warning. It's the kind of place that punishes mistakes. But for the hikers, this was the challenge they had trained for. The kind of expedition that earned respect across the Soviet Union. The group's leader, Igor Dyatlov, was just 23, a top engineering student known for his precision and calm. He assembled 9 others from his university, friends, classmates, and fellow adventurers. They were young, experienced, and determined to earn the Soviet hiking system's highest certification, which required a 200-mile ski journey through the wilderness. On January 25th, they left the city of Sverdlovsk, their packs loaded with tents, stoves, and several cameras to document every stage of the trip. Within days, bad weather began to slow them down. One member, Yuri Udin, turned back with knee pain and heart problems. It was a tough call, but it saved his life. The remaining 9 pressed on through rising wind and snow. By February 1st, they had reached the slopes of Kholat Syakhl. Exhausted and short on daylight, they stopped to camp halfway up the ridge. It wasn't the safest spot. Flat ground lay just a little lower in the trees, but they decided to pitch their tent on the open slope rather than lose elevation. That decision would be their last. When the group missed their expected return date, families raised the alarm. On February 26th, search teams finally reached the area. What they found made no sense. The tent was half buried and cut open from the inside, as though the hikers had slashed their way out in panic. Inside lay boots, coats, and half-eaten food. No one would willingly leave all that behind in a Siberian storm. A line of footprints led downhill toward the forest, gradually fading under snowdrifts. At the edge of the trees, rescuers made their first grim discovery. Beneath a tall cedar, 2 bodies lay beside the remains of a fire. Both were barefoot, dressed only in underwear, with burns on their hands and legs. One had apparently bitten his own hand in agony. A few hundred yards closer to the tent, 3 more were found. Dyatlov himself, Zina Kolmogorova, and Rustem Slobodin. They appeared to have been trying to crawl back uphill when they froze to death. 2 months later, after the thaw began, the last 4 bodies were uncovered in a shallow ravine deeper in the forest. These were different. They were dressed more warmly, as if they had taken clothes from the first victims, but their injuries were horrifying. 1 had a fractured skull. 2 had crushed chests, broken ribs that had punctured their hearts, and 1 woman was missing her tongue, eyes, and parts of her face. No sign of a fight, no animal tracks, no outside footprints. Just 9 dead hikers scattered across the snow, and a tent torn open from within. The autopsies deepened the mystery. The injuries were internal, severe fractures without the surface wounds that would normally accompany them. The coroner compared the trauma to what you'd expect from a car accident or a blast wave, not a fall or an avalanche. The missing eyes and tongue only added to the unease, though later experts pointed out that bodies left for months in a running stream often lose soft tissue naturally. It looked gruesome, but it wasn't necessarily proof of foul play. Then came another twist. Some of the hikers' clothes carried traces of radiation. Not enough to kill, but far above background levels. That discovery, paired with reports of glowing orange lights in the sky, fed the idea that the group had stumbled into a secret military experiment, or something even stranger. But there was no blast pattern, no shrapnel, and no signs of outsiders. The footprints leaving the tent all belonged to the hikers themselves. Whatever drove them out, it came from inside their world, not from strangers in the dark. Over the years, investigators and scientists have returned again and again to the same question. Why did 9 experienced hikers cut their way out of safety and walk barefoot into a blizzard? Some pointed to panic caused by an avalanche. Others blamed secret weapons, infrasound, or even aliens. Most of these theories collapse under scrutiny, but a few survive because they fit at least part of the evidence. The first is a delayed slab avalanche. When Dyatlov's team dug into the slope to set their tent, they undercut a weak snow layer. As the night went on, wind piled more snow above them until a compact slab gave way. It wouldn't have swept them down the mountain, but it could have slammed the tent with brutal force, injuring several people and convincing the rest that a larger slide was seconds away. Cutting their way out makes sense in that moment. They fled downslope to the forest, planning to return when the danger passed. 2 tried to light a fire under the cedar. Others went back toward the tent, but froze before they could reach it. The second is the katabatic wind theory. Powerful downslope gusts that can reach hurricane speeds without warning. In those conditions, tents can collapse instantly, ropes jam with ice, and panic spreads fast. The group could have evacuated to the woods for shelter, then tried to dig a snow cave in a ravine. That snow shelter may have caved in later, crushing the people inside with thousands of pounds of snow. The infrasound hypothesis suggests a mix of the two. Wind roaring over the mountain could have created low-frequency vibrations that trigger irrational fear, disorientation, and nausea. In darkness, with the tent shaking, that panic might have been enough to send them running. And then there's the military theory that the hikers wandered into a secret weapons test area. Witnesses saw bright spheres over the mountains. The radiation levels were real. Some documents from the time remain sealed. It's possible they were collateral damage in an experiment no one dared admit. But there's no physical proof and no consistent evidence of an explosion or gunfire. Each explanation accounts for some clues, but none for all. The truth probably lies in a blend of them, ordinary dangers stacking into catastrophe. By piecing together the evidence, researchers believe the disaster unfolded like this. That night, a dense slab of snow built up above their cut platform. Near midnight, it released suddenly, slamming the tent and injuring several hikers. Fearing the entire slope might give way, they cut through the canvas and moved downhill to safer ground among the trees. They built a fire and tried to regroup. The 2 by the cedar froze first. The others attempted to climb back to the tent for supplies but collapsed along the way. Meanwhile, The remaining 4 dug a snow shelter in a ravine. At some point, its roof collapsed, crushing them under the weight of the snow. 6 died of hypothermia. 3 died from their injuries. The scene that searchers found weeks later was the frozen imprint of those final hours, bodies scattered along a line between the tent, the fire, and the ravine, preserved in the cold. It's a story with no villains, just weather, physics, and the terrible luck of being in the wrong place at the wrong moment. For decades, the case remained an open wound in Russian history, officially closed with the phrase, "an unknown compelling force." In 2019, after renewed public pressure, prosecutors reopened the investigation. Their 2020 report favored the slab avalanche theory, supported by modern modeling from Swiss scientists. Simulations showed that a compact snow block, triggered hours after the hikers pitched their tent, could easily produce the same internal injuries recorded in the autopsies, without destroying the tent entirely. Field expeditions in 2021 even found small slab avalanches nearby that vanished within hours of a storm, leaving almost no trace. It wasn't a dramatic cover-up or supernatural event. It was a chain of natural hazards, small, believable, and deadly. Today, the site is known as Dyatlov Pass. Hikers still visit, laying flowers and flags in the snow. The case has inspired countless books, films, and documentaries, but the reality is more human than mythic. These weren't victims of mystery. They were explorers who faced the edge of what humans can survive. Their diaries and photographs show laughter, teamwork, and pride. They didn't set out to make history. They set out to walk across a mountain range and came up against forces they couldn't fight. The mystery endures not because of what we don't know, but because of what we do. The wind, the cold, the fear of snow shifting overhead, all of it feels too ordinary to explain such tragedy. Yet sometimes the simplest answer is also the hardest to accept. 9 hikers didn't die because of monsters or secret weapons or anything supernatural. They died because nature doesn't negotiate. A storm, a slab of snow, a wrong decision at midnight, and the mountain kept its silence. The Dyatlov Pass disaster remains one of the most haunting mountaineering tragedies in history, not for what can't be proven, but for how close it feels to something that could happen to anyone. What do you think happened that night? Which theory makes the most sense to you? If you enjoyed this story, subscribe for more deep dive expeditions into deadly mountains and the mysteries they leave behind.